Hi, and welcome to Radio Out There. I'm Barry Eaton. Well, we look up at night and see that lovely orb in the sky, the moon. But do we understand just how much it plays a part in our life? Well, we're going to find out this week. Iris Detenhoff is my special guest. We're going to find out about the power and the influence of the moon on a daily basis and how we can work with it and understand how we can improve our life. Iris, you and I have spoken so many times in the past, but we've never done it on both audio and video. So it's lovely to see you and let all the audience see you as well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Barry, and thank you for the opportunity to see you again as well.
Wonderful. Well, we used to be neighbours almost quite a few years ago, and
a long time.
Used to take our dogs for a walk and all sorts of stuff. We won't talk about that because your lovely Monty is over on the other side. So anyway, let us talk about, you have a wonderful book called The Moontime Diary, and I use it all the time. My partner Anne, of course, she uses it as well. And I've always wanted to ask you, now you're an astrologer, I'm an astrologer, what made you head towards the moon as far as putting a diary together?
Well, I come from Germany, from Bavaria, which is very close to the Alpine region. And this area is, as mostly in the whole world, it's ruled by seasons and cycles, but maybe more so in colder climates because you have a very strong and cold and long winter, and you have to be prepared. So the moon, with its cyclic nature, has given people traditionally indications when to plant, when to harvest, and all sorts, and also for animal breeding, for example. So there is a lot to the moon cycle, fertility and gardening or farming traditionally.
Right. So let's talk about a lot more about that as we go on. But what I want to do is go back to basics for a start, because most people, when they hear the word astrology, they think, oh God, 3 lines in a newspaper or a magazine, it's all BS. But so they look at their sun sign. Yeah, okay, I was born in July. I'm a Cancer. You're a Scorpio, I know that. So that is as far as most people look at astrology, but there's so much more. So let's talk about the moon itself. Okay. Now, you've said the effects of the moon, but let's talk about the moon. It's out there. It goes around about 28 days for the month there, always changing signs. And it's not like the sun. It's much, much quicker, obvious, small. So why does the moon affect us so much as a planetary body, do you think?
I would say because it is so much closer than all the other planets, and the moon and the Earth as a package rotate around the sun. So with that rotation, there is a waxing and waning phase, and these phases have an effect on literally the moisture content in our atmosphere. And if you go from the atmosphere to seas and lakes and rivers to bodies and plants, we consist about around 75% of water. That water is affected by these cyclic changes, as, for example, you can also see with tidal movements. So,
No. Well, what I was going to ask is, we know about waxing and waning moons. Maybe people don't know about that. Just a quick explanation. Waxing and waning. Just tell people.
Okay. So the waxing phase is from the new moon to the full moon, which is about 14 days. And at that time, the moon actually, from our point of view on Earth, starts looking bigger and rounder. At the full moon, we see a round disk. And leading up to the full moon, we see different phases. The first quarter is actually what we perceive as a half moon, but it's basically the first quarter. And from the full moon to the new moon, we have the waning phase. And from then onwards, the moon is becoming, the disk is becoming smaller or a slither back to the new moon. And the third quarter moon is again viewed from Earth as a half moon, but it is a quarter we're actually seeing.
Yeah.
So that waxing and waning, that kind of rhythm that is ongoing, that's the impact it actually has on moisture. And for example, the waxing phase, we absorb more. And if you imagine, if you are breathing in for 14 days, by the day 14, you have very, very full lungs, and the internal pressure is really high. When we reach the full moon, it actually tips over into the waning phase. It's only a moment, but then it tips over into the waning phase, and that helps us release. So this is where we build up tension. The moon also relates to emotions. And when we get into astrology and see which sign the moon is moving through, or where the full and new moons are, this is where a higher energetic emphasis is.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to throw something at you because I saw somebody asked a question. I can't remember where it was. It was one of those online things. I get about 100 emails a day. And one of them sort of said from this person, why with the moon, which is a set distance from the Earth, it varies a little bit, apogee and perigee, but why is the fact that that moon is out there just because we see a bit more or a bit less light on it? Why does that affect us? But it's the same moon, it's the same thing, it's the same body out there. I thought, now that is a very
that is a really
interesting
question. Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, the moon and the sun, they're called luminaries. They are not planets as such. Planets are the wanderers like Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and so on. But the moon and the sun are luminaries. And the moon itself actually does not radiate, does not have any own light. It reflects the light of the sun. There is actually the energy of the sun. And depending on, and we actually have to look at a geocentric view from here. It's a bit hard to explain without visuals. But if we are standing on Earth, and for example, at a new moon, where the moon and the sun are conjunct in the same sign, when we look at the sun, the moon is right in front of us, but we can't see it because the sunlight actually outshines it. That's the new moon.
Now, when we say conjunct, just letting people know, that's within a few degrees of each other as far as the solar system is concerned,
Yeah.
Because there's lots of different angles. People get confused. Oh, what's conjunct? What's opposition? Well, obviously opposition is 180 degrees away, and then we've got other angles. Because it's quite a complex study when you first look at it, but it all makes so much sense.
Yeah. I mean, the angles, that is... In the diaries, I've got a page relating to the aspects of all the different planets to each other, and the angles are really the interesting bit, because when we think about the moon, so the basic function or the basic effect we can see is, say, the tides. We also can observe it with planting. We can observe it with our own emotions, depending on which phase the moon is, and actually how it aspects our own planets in our own chart. So this is where it gets really complex.
It does. But when I do a chart for somebody, I always explain to them that the moon, which reflects the light from the sun, is our inner self. And that's why it relates to our emotions, because we are reflecting that major energy, and we have to look inside ourselves. And then, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I do a little chat with people before I do their chart, just to explain a bit, so it's not all sounding like a whole bunch of weird planetary stuff, astro speak or whatever. But I mean, the planets themselves, we are energy, they are energy. It all ties in. And if people can understand that and get away from this 3 lines in a magazine somewhere, half the time it's written by people who aren't even astrologers. But I mean, when you go into how it can help, now in your diary, I've got the new one here for 2025, wonderful things on health and well-being. And because that's the inner self, and that's reflecting there, the moon and our health obviously makes a lot of sense. So in your diary, you can have a look and see how your health may be reflected in where the moon is and what's happening in your life. So it all starts to fall in place for those people who are wondering, well, what's the moon got to do with the diary?
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is why I think the diary it can be quite a good entry point for people who are interested in it because
Mm,
because the moon is the closest to us and has the biggest effect. But once we understand how it actually affects us, then we can also kind of see how other planets can affect us in slightly different ways and maybe more finer ways. The moon is really very much on a physical because of the moisture and water content, but because of that, again, within ourselves, the
mm.
emotions are related to water, or the water signs are the emotional signs, you know.
I know
So
you and I are both water signs,
yeah,
Cancer and Scorpio.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why we're such good friends, because we get on well here.
yeah. So, like, and when people then, for example, many people say a full moon is really affecting them and they couldn't sleep or they were really
Yeah.
irritated and
Mm,
whatnot. So in that case, if they know where their sun is, where their own personal moon is, or other planets, then you can kind of hone in and figure out why this affects that person in that way. It doesn't
mm,
affect us all at the same time in the same way because everybody has a different constellation in their natal chart.
mm. Well, that's
But
right. It's really important if people would only do a little bit of search, talk to an astrologer or whatever, learn a bit more, because it's such a wonderful, oh, I call it the blueprint of life, because it's who we are, and everybody is different. Everybody is unique. And it's
yeah.
such a tremendous help in life. And
I think so too, because
hmm,
it did help me figure myself out.
did it?
You know?
In what way?
In many ways, because my chart is a bit complex, say
Hmm,
that way. And I kind of felt that contradictions or tensions within myself, like and looking at my chart, I can actually see what is causing it
hmm,
and how I can make that work best, because that's what my astrology teacher actually told me. You find the way of least resistance. Not of lazy, not because you're lazy, but the way of least resistance to make the most of what you actually have.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I studied astrology after I was going through a divorce, and I wanted a different life. And I was working on air with a psychic, and she said to me, "You'll be doing all this sort of stuff soon." I said, "Oh yeah, really? I'm
Mm.
running a company, media relations. I'm on air. I'm working 85 hours a week." She was right. I went in there, and all of a sudden, I got this message in my head: go and study astrology, because I had
Okay.
an astrologer as a guest on my program regularly. And I did, and it changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
learned about myself and you learned about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we can help other people
Yeah.
understand themselves and what's
Yeah.
going on in the world.
Yeah. And like for me, producing or writing the Moontime Diary every year, because that data is new every day, so
Mm,
there's not one day as the next, um, factors into really well as the way I'm kind of wired. Like I've got 3 planets in Virgo. It suits me really well. All the numbers and
all the
aspects and
organization.
interpretations and analysis and putting it together. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
We should mention to people that all the other planets, I mean, it's not just the sun and the moon, all the planets have an effect on us, because we work with archetypes. And like
yeah,
Mars was the old Roman god of war, Venus the god of love, and all the other planets
yeah,
have an association. So we use those archetypes, and that's why Carl Jung was such a wonderful person with archetypes and was also an astrologer. So
yeah,
it's all there, and we can understand ourselves. And
yeah,
you help us with this book because, as you said, every single day there's something there to give you a little hint as to what would go well or what to avoid or
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. And if you look at the diary, okay, it is repetitive, but so is the moon cycle. It is
So is
repetitive,
life.
like once around the Earth, 1 month. And then we have the seasonal cycles, obviously,
Mm,
and the yearly and all the other planetary cycles. But with the diary, what I'm doing is actually I'm rather providing people with the tools to actually have the data, like it's like an almanac. So I'm providing the data, and what people do with it is literally their own thing,
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So it was the moon that really pulled you in as an astrologer, because I mean, I think there are other people who do diaries just on the sun, but
Yeah.
that's so general and everything like that. The moon has a far greater impact on all of life, doesn't it?
Yeah. And okay, I'll tell you, my mother actually, so I'm from Bavaria, and there is a couple in Austria in Bavaria, Johanna Paumner and what's her partner's name? Thomas Poppe, I think. And they have published a moon calendar in a totally different way than the diary is. But they also published a book which came out by a publisher called Irisiana. And my mom saw that book and the publisher Irisiana and bought it for me.
Right.
And that probably was the beginning, because that was the first book I had about the moon specifically. And at that time, I was using an astrological diary from Steve Jolly, like celestial timing. And I experimented around with gardening and with cutting my hair and doing the windows. I just experimented about the moon cycles in line with that book, what was suggested kind of, and found that it really works, and that I got much better organized, because that opportunity comes again every month. So even if you don't finish it this month, next month you can finish it, Yeah.
But I like the little daily ones too. I mean, Anne and I are going for a holiday next year, and I had a look on the day, but also just beforehand, I had a look at my birthday, and it's
Oh, yeah.
I'm on the 7th of July. That's my birthday, 7th of the 7th, all the sevens. And it's an excellent day for meeting friends and new people. So obviously I'm trying to have a party or something. But if you are planning on a gathering, then that's very useful sort of information.
Yeah.
If you're not, you might suddenly think, oh, yeah, I haven't caught up with some old friends or whatever. I just pulled that one at random. So
Yeah.
every day there's a little hint there that
Yeah.
helps people. And I found that very, very useful. I know Anne, my partner, you know Anne, of course, and Anne does it all the time. She'll quote to me such and such, oh, Iris says so-and-so on the diary. So
Yeah, I'm
how do
surprised.
you come up with something like that every day?
Okay. So I literally use Solar Fire, a transit chart for Sydney times.
Now, Solarfire, we must mention, is
an astrological software from Stephanie Johnson.
that's right. So we do.
Yeah.
I'm on Solarfire as well. That's how we put our charts together.
Yeah.
Okay, right, go on.
So I've got my template there, and it's quite a lengthy process with creating the data, copy, paste, and proofreading endlessly. But when I come to the particular day, I sit there and I look at the chart as it kind of changes even hour-wise, and I look at the feature of the day. And sometimes there are some really nice aspects. It's not only the moon, it's other things as well, like all the other planets. So sometimes there are very nice aspects, and I factor all the other planets in when there is something that really sticks out. And otherwise, I rely really more on the moon, where it is positioned at that moment and what aspects it's having. If they are predominantly harsh, like oppositions and squares, then, like you might come across a day where it says, try to be diplomatic. If it's a full moon in Aries, it would definitely say, careful with stimulants because of headaches and migraines and really bad hangovers. And if you are aware of that, it's true. Like there is a particular full moon in the year, which is the full moon in Aries. And if that falls on a weekend in October sometime, and people start partying because they're standing at the barbecue, what a headache or a hangover at that time is so much worse than at other full moon. Because Aries rules the head and the brain. And if it is full, you've got a lot of internal pressure, and people who are sensitive to that, they get a headache.
Now, that's something we should mention too, that every planet has an association with a part of the body. And once we understand that and see how it might be affected positively or challenging, I don't use negative, it's either a challenge or it's a plus, then we can work with that as well. So,
Hmm.
and that works a lot with health and well-being, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So the diary has an affinity table in the back of it, and that affinity table tells you which planet rules what sign, what it is, what it actually, which sign rules what body part or organ,
Mm-hmm.
and along these lines, you can actually tweak whatever is your personal maybe weakness. You know, like for example, if you're Capricorn and you have problems with your knee, then there are some days where you should be a bit lighter on your knees and not really go on those days for a long distance march.
Yeah.
So that there are just little hints, but particularly if we're getting a bit older, they make perfect sense.
Mm. Now, I suppose some people might think, oh, come on, how can a planet be associated with a body? It's a little light up there. How can that be associated with your ankles or your knees or your head or your throat? I mean, come on, stop talking rubbish. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of, not my listeners and viewers, I'm sure about that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that will think, oh, that's just rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, it is an old traditional way of looking at the body and trying to understand it. Interestingly enough, nowadays, a lot of these things do come into kind of view and place. So it's not really so outlandish, I think. It's just a different lens to look through.
Yeah, yeah. I think more and more people are looking, particularly after what we went through with all this pandemic and that. And people wanted to be told not what to do and not to go out and cover your
Yeah.
face with masks and all that sort of stuff because it's been proved that most of it was all over the place. They're looking and opening their minds now to think, well, hang on, there are other ways of looking, there are other answers out there. So I think people are looking and wanting to have more information in these, shall we say, more esoteric areas or areas we haven't really examined.
Mm. Not really examined. Like I mean, this
No,
is
what they haven't
what
examined.
they have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I mean, particularly if it's new for someone to kind of sink your head into it could be a bit otherworldly, but then on the other hand, like even that makes perfect sense to me. If you want to strengthen your immune system, or my way would be strengthen your immune system, and then you do not have to deal with all that fear. I mean, obviously, if we're running ourselves down and ragged and don't have a good nutrition, then we are susceptible to anything that comes along. Anything, any emotional stress, any virus, any bacteria.
Mm.
So my motto is keep yourself strong and weather what's coming along. We can't expect that nothing ever is going to hit us because it's unrealistic, really.
That's very true. That's very true. And you've also put in the diary a couple of herbal drinks and various things like that that might help people in this area to improve their health and their immunity.
Yeah. So from a gardening point, you can grow herbs, and moontime gardening is quite popular because a lot of gardeners and farmers actually know about the moon phases and when to plant and harvest. But this year I also included a small chapter about electrolytes, about what we can drink to keep ourselves fit during this hot summer we are going to face. So that's what I'm trying to share, like simple ways of staying well.
Fair enough. Now,
Yeah.
this is the Australian diary we're talking about, but it's also available overseas, isn't it? Your
Yeah.
diary.
Yeah, there is a Northern Hemisphere available,
Mm-hmm.
and one can order this online. It's actually published on Lulu's Publishing. It has a spiral binding, and it is a bit more colorful than the Australian version because it's a different type of print.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's available basically anywhere,
Mm.
and it has GMT, Greenwich Mean Time.
Uh-huh. So how does somebody find that?
You can go on my website on moontimediary.com.au and have a
Right.
look at the
Have a
shop.
look there.
You see
Okay.
the Northern Hemisphere edition. And I also actually published a A4 Australian edition because one of my customers kept on pushing.
Yeah.
And so I just tried it and it turned out really well. So
Good.
it is digital print, not
Yeah.
offset,
Mm.
but it is hang on, there.
Oh, there we are.
Yep. it has a spiral.
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
It
Now, for
is,
those people who are just listening to us on audio, you can't see it, but you know
yeah,
on the
you can't see
website.
it. But
Hmm.
it is A4, has more space,
Uh-huh.
and she wanted it for her shop to book appointments.
That's
Yeah,
a good idea because the normal diary is much more, of course,
yeah.
suits me. But yeah, for those people who are thinking, come on, this sounds like some kind of infomercial you're doing. No, it's not. It's not. I'm not being paid. You're not paying me or anything like that. I do it because I believe in what you're doing, and I have believed in you ever since I saw your very first diary. And I like to share this sort of thing with my listeners and viewers. So there
Thank
we are.
you so much, Barry. I really appreciate that.
Well,
Every
I want
year.
to put that disclaimer in this, instead people think, hello, he's being paid on the side, isn't he? Ah, he's getting money for this. No, I am
No,
not.
no, no, it's
I don't
really
get
the
money for
network.
anything. This is all a service to people. I don't get paid at all. So let's go back a bit more now and talk about some of the things that are in the diary that will help people. Now, you're talking about, for instance, I'm looking here, it says timing table for health and well-being and activities, dental appointment. Now, it's best to go on a waning moon. Now,
Mhm.
that's not always possible, is it? Because sometimes you have to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks to go and see a dentist or a
Yeah,
doctor or whatever. So you
yeah,
can't always say, I'm sorry, I can't come that day. I can only come the day after because it's a waning moon.
yeah. Now, obviously, if it is an emergency, you don't muck around and you
No,
go, you need to go.
yeah.
But for example, the way I do it, when I'm at the dentist, I make the next appointment for a checkup and a cleanup while I'm there. I've got my diary with me. I know where the moon is, and I will choose a day when it is waning and when the moon is in Virgo. I prefer that
Uh-huh.
because Virgo is very critical and nitpicking. And while the moon is in Virgo, we have that kind of mood predominantly. So I believe or think that the dentist on a day like that is maybe more thorough, as in looking and in working and in
Mm.
cleaning up the teeth, than on, say, a full moon in Aries, you know. Or if you would have to have an extraction, I would really try and avoid a full moon in Taurus
Why is that?
because Taurus rules the
The
jaws
jaw.
and the bones, and a full moon in Taurus, like it is head, it's predominantly head. You have a headache anyway. It's all very, very sensitive.
Mm.
And I would rather wait for a couple of days and have it pulled after the full moon because then we are on the outbreath, on the relaxing phase.
Mm.
Until the
Mm.
full moon, it's building up. There's a lot of pressure. There is more potential for bleeding and infection as
Ah.
well. So that's how I would deal with that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about surgery, for instance? Because
Yeah.
I had to have surgery a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the doctor says, "Okay, this is the day we can book you in." There's very little sort of flexibility, shall we say, there. So, what should we try and look for and try and avoid if we're having surgery? Does it depend on the part of the body, for instance?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it it depends on the moon phase and
Mm.
on the part of the body. And again, I would start looking at the full moon and the new moon
Mm.
because at a full moon we have a sun-moon opposition, but at the new moon we have both in the same sign. So, for example, knee surgery is quite common.
Mm.
And it's elective surgery. So if it is an emergency, like don't listen to me. For an emergency, it's a different story. But knee surgery in itself is usually selective. You have to wait a couple of years. So theoretically, one could actually look ahead and start making an appointment, ideally for that day. And maybe you have to make a few other appointments and then kind of factor it down. But for example, for knee surgery, you really try to avoid the full moon in Capricorn, which is usually around June, July, in the
Hmm.
midst of the year.
So
Because
why? Why do you want to avoid that?
because Capricorn rules the knees.
Hmm.
And at a full moon, when we have so much fluid retention in our body, everything is more sensitive. And because Capricorn rules the knees, it is said that on a full moon, the knee is particularly sensitive. If you'd be cutting and breaking or working on the knee on a day like that, you could do potentially more damage than on other days because it is more sensitive. The other thing is because of the higher internal pressure, there is really a higher chance of bleeding and also of infections, because this is why the moon is waxing and getting full towards Capricorn. So this is only one day or a couple of days a year. And if it is elective surgery, one could really try and avoid it. I mean, if it doesn't work any other way, then obviously go for it.
Yeah.
But and I'm not saying that that horrible things actually are going to happen, but maybe you want to be a bit more alert, like you don't want to put up with pressure in your knee and think, oh yeah, that's just normal, that swelling, because at that moment, this swelling is actually extra and the knee is extra irritated.
So in other words, it is better to do that. You've got a more positive outlook and less complications or potential complications, shall we say.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been an astrologer now for, 33 years or something, and I'm learning just by sitting here talking to you. It is such a wonderful subject. There is so much to learn, so much to learn. So many other things about health as well, even down to, now the ladies will love this, what is the best time to wash your hair?
Okay. Now washing your hair.
Washing your hair, right.
Okay. Now, like for some reason, we actually have been trained to wash your hair every day. And actually not just once, but repeat the procedure as if we would have really dirty hair every day. And the only thing we're doing is we're drying out our skin and we're actually, depending on the shampoo, I guess, ruining our hair, And in real terms, you don't have to wash your hair every day.
No.
My trick is actually washing your hair when the moon is in Leo, because Leo actually, every Leo likes his hair. Now, if they don't have hair, it is an issue, but generally Leos do have some nice hair and they really like it. And it is the main and kind of nearly status symbol of Leo.
Of course, Leo the lion. But okay, that's one time a year. Unless you want to
No.
A month, I'm sorry. A month. Not a year, a month.
No, and I'm not saying just once a month when the moon is in Leo, But the thing is, so when the moon is in Leo, it's a really good time to actually look after your hair, whether this is washing and conditioning or cutting or streaks or coloring the whole head, or I don't know. But when the moon is in Leo, that is particularly effective. Okay. But if you keep on washing your hair all the time while the moon is moving through a water sign, then you tend to have that kind of sticky hair, slick, like dandruffy hair. And this is when people wash it every day, then they kind of encourage that.
Sure.
But if you try to avoid these days when the moon is in a water sign, and it doesn't have to be always, but in general, I can avoid that. I don't wash my hair every day. It looks really normal and good. I would say just about most of the day.
Those people on YouTube, it looks wonderful right now, as everybody will agree. So there we are.
Yeah. But the thing is, so the worst time in this case is when the moon moves through a water sign. And if you manage to avoid that, then you actually condition your hair to look and grow well without that backlash kind of with, now it's really greasy again and I have to wash it again and I wash it twice so it's not that greasy, like it's a bit of a cycle. We actually got into it. I mean, to think about that every person would have to wash their hair twice every day, like wash it, rinse it, wash it, and then conditioner is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
What we are putting into our grey water, it is just amazing. And it's not needed. Yeah.
Well, there you are.
That is where sustainability comes in.
Well, now, there's a very nice list in the diary, so people can have a look for themselves. So that explains that. Now, let's talk about things like the garden. Now, not everybody has a garden, of course, but they might have indoor plants or something like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
it's very important. I mean, people have been farming to the moon for what, tens of thousands of years,
yeah,
haven't they? So
yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, farming and harvesting. I actually came across a winery around Stansop, and I think it was called Moon something. That's why I went there, and they were actually harvesting at that stage by the moon. And noticed that if you harvest fruit, grapes, while it is full moon or towards a full moon, they're they're more flavorsome than if you harvest it after a full moon towards a waning moon.
Really? So
Mhm.
there's the moisture then that's coming
Yeah,
into it.
it is because all the moisture and the flavors and the nutrients actually literally collect in the fruit at that time.
Right.
And when the moon is waning, that all sinks, not all, but it tends to sink down into the plant and more into the roots. It is a kind of hydraulic circuit. The plant is pulling up nutrients in the waxing phase and is supplying and growing. And in the waning phase, it kind of drops, like you can
Mm.
relate the waning to autumn, dropping the leaves.
I wonder how many winemakers actually know that or even work to it.
I think quite a lot of people who are growing vegetables are aware of that. I
Definitely.
really do. Yeah, yeah.
So, but what about for the home person who is thinking, okay, now I've got a small garden, I've got a big garden, I've got a court garden like I have out the back here. Um, what do we need to know in general?
In general, for me,
Mm.
the most important was to water and remember to water the plants. Okay, so I cannot claim that I'm the best gardener, but since I'm gardening by the moon, I remember to water, to fertilize, to cut them back, and to harvest them. And it works so much better, like I actually get a bit of produce and I experiment a bit around, like with taste. Um, I once gave a talk, and it was in a community garden actually, and it was a full moon, and we could go outside and try the basil and the rosemary, and actually people could notice that it is really intense on that day.
Mm, mm, mm.
So that's what I believe gardeners, if they don't have such a green thumb, can learn out of it. And otherwise, many gardeners have it in their blood.
Yeah.
They do it often instinctively.
Fair enough. Well, there's a lot of information in there. We're running a bit short of time here now, so I'll just talk about a couple of other things. For those people who do look at their sun sign, you do have a page for every particular, and some wonderful, wonderful artwork in here too.
You
Uh,
like that? Uh-huh.
oh, I do. I'm just whipping. I stopped there at Taurus because she's Taurus. Oh, very Anne here, and I'm Cancer. Oh, very interesting person there. But the forecast for 2025 says, I have a spirit of camaraderie and togetherness which can make my working environment more cohesive and run smoothly. So that plus more. So there's some nice information
Wow.
like that
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
every single person.
Yeah.
And then we go down into the day by day stuff there.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very comprehensive diary that you put out there, and people can use it as much or as often as they want.
Mm.
It must take you ages putting all this information together.
It actually does take a long time,
Mm,
but I have worked on a software where this is actually going to happen a little bit faster, and I can write the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere um, in a different way because I literally got all that data and information from several softwares
mm.
and to copy and paste and make sure you're not missing any symbols and really keep it correct is takes a lot of time.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it takes me about half a year to get it ready for print, from beginning to end.
I remember when we lived close to each other, you were always flat out for so long. And then by the end of the year, it goes out all over the place. And
Yeah.
it's almost as if you can sort of say, oh, I can have a relax now.
No, I can't because I
Oh, you
have
can't have a relax. I'm
this,
sorry.
and marketing. I mean, if you know somebody who could help me market, that would be awesome. Marketing is actually my shortcoming.
All right.
Uh,
Well, we'll put the word out here now. If
yeah.
anybody wants to talk to you about that. Go through your website.
Yep,
The
can
best way?
contact me.
All right, okay, I'll put the website up for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
But for those people who are watching at the moment, though, what is it again? Your website? What is your website
On my
again?
website, moontimediary.com.au.
moontimediary.com.au. So there we are. Iris, I could talk to you for ages and ages. There's so much in there. I do encourage people to have a look at the diary. It's available all over the place and through your website. So it's fantastic. I love it. Wouldn't be without it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to my work with the moon right through the next
Yes,
2025.
You're going to spruce up your workplace.
Am I? Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, it looks pretty good for mine.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much, and all the very best with.
Thank you so much, Barry, and please, my love to Anne.
I will indeed. Okay.
Take good care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And that's it for this week on Radio Out There. And have a check of Iris's website at moontimediary.com.au, and they are wonderful. I can vouch for them. I use them every day. moontimediary.com.au. Next week, we'll be looking at some different aspects of life. Life, not on the moon, but how the Earth affects our life. See you then.